Hi, I'm Katie Quillen, and this is my kitchen. I'm not a chef, but I love to cook. Join me and let's figure it out together. Today is the beginning of our Southwestern Style Meal. Part 1. 7-layer dip. For the first layer of our 7-layer bean dip is beans. We're going to go ahead and use whole dry beans, and we're going to soak them to get them ready to be cooked. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and put it into a container, and you're going to fill it up with water about 1 inch over the beans. To measure that, you can go ahead and stick your finger into the beans and measure it up to the first crease of your finger. That's a good little tip to do. You're going to soak it from 6 to 8 hours. You really don't want to soak it any longer than that, because the beans get mushy and they don't really cook very well. So what you're going to go ahead and do is, after they're all nice and ready and soaked, is you're going to go ahead and rinse them, put them in a pan, fill them up the same way that you did to soak them, so about 1 inch above the beans, add some seasonings, and we're going to boil it for 1 hour. So let's go ahead and rinse these babies off. And you can't really see this, but I have a strainer in here that I'm actually using. Go ahead and pour this in. I actually use 2 cups for the purpose of this, just due to having another dish with black beans. It's nice to cook extra. You can always have leftovers. So I'm going to go ahead and put these all in the strainer. Now the purpose of rinsing it is it's got this, I don't know, black residue from the water. We just want to go ahead and get that off. So it's really good to rinse it off. And for the dip, you really only want to use about 1 cup. But like I said, having leftovers is good. 2 cups I preferably do, even with rice, just so there's a little bit left over for other meals, and it's good to do that. So let's go ahead and rinse these nice and good. Okay, so now that these are all rinsed off, I'm going to go ahead and get my pan. And using a nice big pan is good, even if you have a lot of room after you put the beans in and the water. So let's go ahead and put these in. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and fill this up for about 1 inch over the beans. So go ahead and let it fill up. And then we also have some seasonings we're going to put into the water to give it some flavor while it cooks. That's about right. So let's go ahead and, what I have here is 2 cloves of garlic. I diced it instead of putting it into a garlic press. I like having the big chunks. It really makes it nice when you bite into, actually. Let's go ahead and put that in there. And then I've diced some onions. This is about 1/4 cup. We're going to put that in there as well. And you really don't want to use a whole lot of salt, because if you over salt, then they just taste salty. So just a dash is all you need. And this salt container doesn't really come out very quickly, so I had to shake it a few times. So let's go ahead and put this on the stove. And you want it to boil, so you're going to do medium-high heat to bring it to a boil. And you're going to leave that for 1 hour, and then we're going to go ahead and prepare the other parts to the dish while that's cooking. The second layer of our 7-layer bean dip is guacamole. We have our ingredients here. We have 2 ripe avocados, 1/2 of a lemon, 1 Roma tomato. We're going to use about a handful of cilantro. We don't want that to overpower our flavor in here. We have 1 clove chopped of garlic. We have about 1/8 of a teaspoon of chili powder, and we also have 1/4 cup of diced onions. So we're going to go ahead and get all these together, and we're going to put it in a blender / food processor to make the guacamole nice and creamy. We don't want it to be too processed, but at the same time we want it to be nice and smooth. So what we're going to actually be putting in the food processor is just a few ingredients. We're not going to put them all because we want it to be a little bit chunky. So the tomato and the onions, we want to keep those out of there. This is always a difficult part to get out the seeds. So you can go ahead and use a spoon since all this is going to get mushed up anyway. Let's go ahead and cut these. This is the best way to cut an avocado is just go ahead and slice it in half and then get the seed out with a spoon. Sometimes if you have a nice sharp knife, you can just chop into the seed and pull it out. But I find that sometimes that doesn't work and then you have a couple of cuts in the seed, and this way it's just easier. So you're going to go ahead and just slice down onto the avocado. Just makes it easier to blend. If you're doing this by hand, doing this is very helpful. It makes it into small pieces that you can mush with a fork. So we're just going to go ahead and dice these up here. Careful not to push too hard because you can cut through the skin of the avocado, not your hand. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Get these ready. So those are all nice and cut. So we can just set those aside. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and rinse this off because we're going to use the skin. So you don't want the skin to be dirty. So we'll go ahead and rinse off our knife as well because it's got avocado on it. So we're going to go ahead and cut off the top of our tomato here as well as the end. Get those hard pieces off. We're going to go ahead and slice this down the middle, and we're actually going to be removing the seeds. Seeds don't make it nice, so we're going to go ahead and scoop these out. It's a nice little trick. I like doing this when making it for salad or any other dish, just removing the seeds, nice and easy. Just scoop it out. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and dice up this tomato into fairly good sized chunks. We're not using any more than one because there's going to be tomatoes in another layer of the 7-layer bean dip, so you don't need too much. Just enough to make it add a little flavor. So now that that's all nice and chopped, we can go ahead and set the tomatoes aside because those aren't going in yet. And then go ahead and just grab what you want to use for the cilantro. Again, don't want to use too much. And the food processor / blender is actually going to chop this up instead of us chopping with a knife. So just go ahead and put that in there. Okay. And then I'm just going to set that over there. We're going to go ahead and put our avocado in. Nice and easy. So we made all those cuts. Okay. All right. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and squeeze, try to get the seeds out of the lemon. You don't want those to be mixed in there. Okay. What helps is to get the lemon nice and prepped first. Maybe stab it a little bit and squeeze it in. Make sure there's no chunks in the avocado that's gonna create problems. All right. And at this step, you can go ahead and add the garlic and the chili powder because that's gonna give it some good flavor as it's all mixing in. So we're going to go ahead and put it on our lid and just pulse with the blender. We don't want it too mixed up. It's kind of messy, huh? Okay. Let's check to see if that's good. Oh, it's still a little chunky. We'll just go ahead and move it around a little bit. Actually, it's got a nice little texture. I think we'll pulse it one more time and we'll pull it out of there. The only problem with using a blender or a food processor is getting it all out of there. All right, I think that's about good. So let's go ahead and pull this out. And this is the fun part, scooping it all out of there. So we got our bowl. Just gonna put this in here. Okay, I think that looks good. I'm just gonna go ahead and set this aside. Okay, so now that we've got the avocado mixture in our bowl, we're gonna go ahead and add the tomatoes. And actually, looking at that, that's probably a little bit too much. Go ahead and add the onions. And again, just eyeball it. If it looks like it's gonna be too much, just put in a little bit at a time. And you're just gonna go ahead and stir that up. Get it nice and mixed. Okay, and then we're just gonna go ahead and cover this and put it aside and start on our other dish. And I actually think our beans are almost done. Okay, so let's move on. So after 1 hour, your beans will be ready, but the best way to check is by going ahead and pulling out one of the beans and squishing it to make sure it's the right consistency. So we went ahead and did that to make sure that it's ready. So be careful because they are hot. So you just go ahead and take the bean and you squish it. And then it should have that nice, smooth kind of feel to it. And then what you're gonna do, you wanna save the juice from the beans. So you're gonna go ahead and strain it. Just be really careful. You're gonna save the juice. And while I'm doing this, I'm actually heating up another pan with 2 tablespoons of olive oil, of which we're gonna go ahead and refry these beans. And the reason why we're saving the juice is we're gonna use it just to make sure that the beans don't get dry. So we're draining that. And another ingredient that we're gonna use is actually milk. You can use half and half, you can use almond milk. My husband and I drink coconut milk, you can even use that. Just remember, it will add a little bit of flavor to it. Okay, so this is about ready. So we're gonna go ahead and scoop out what we wanna use. Since I'm gonna use about half of this, I'm only gonna put in a spoonful at a time. And with a potato masher, we're gonna go ahead and make sure that it gets nice and smooth. So we're just gonna do 1 tablespoon at a time, and that's a little hot, so I'm gonna turn it down. Just go ahead and smash it. And at the same time, we're gonna add some bean juice. And you don't wanna do what I just did and make the pan too hot, so make sure that you don't do that. Although it's working out pretty good, so let's go ahead and add a little bit more juice so you can even hear it starting to cool down. So go ahead and add some beans. Let's just start mushing it around, make it nice and smooth. Add a little bit of the milk, and you're just gonna eyeball it, just adding a little bit at a time. The milk adds a nice creamy flavor to it. The last thing that you want to do is serve dry beans. I'm going to just put a couple more spoonfuls of this. Just mush it around. Add a little bit more bean juice. At this step, you can flavor your beans. You can add a little bit of salt. You can pretty much do anything that you want to your beans while keeping them still beans. It's a little bit too creamy, so I'm going to add some more beans. I think my flame is a little too low. After you get it to a nice consistency, you're going to want to taste it to make sure that it tastes good. And then at that time, you can add whatever you need to make it taste how you want it to taste. Just make sure that if you taste it, you don't stick the same spoon that you put in your mouth back into the dish, because that's just gross. Oh, that looks pretty good, nice and smooth. Okay. It needs some salt. So I'm going to go ahead and get some salt and just sprinkle it in. You don't want to put too much with salt because it's so easy to oversalt and then it just overpowers the dish. So, and it was a little chunky, so it needs to be mixed up a little bit more. Add a little bit more milk. Okay. Maybe add a little bit more bean juice. And this is just trial and error, so you just do gradually. So just make it exactly how you like it, or how your guests will like it. Okay, turn the heat down just a little bit. You don't want to burn them, so make sure your heat's not too high. And you don't want them to dry out either. So let's go ahead and give this another taste. I'm going to get another spoon because I put the other one in my mouth. And you can rinse it off too. It's up to you. Okay. That's good beans.
Thank you for watching this episode of Katie Q's Kitchen. Tune in next Wednesday for part 2 of our 7-layer dip. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. Once again, thank you for watching, and remember, go with your gut and follow your taste buds. Thank you for watching.